In Colossians chapter 1, and this is the essence of our study for today. This is the key text of our study today. It says, and I'll continue really reading from Colossians chapter 1 after from verse 16. Therefore, by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in the earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. And he is the head of the body. Notice that carefully. He is the head. No one else is the head. No one else can be the head. For the very fact that no one else has created the world, no one else can redeem. He is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from among the dead, that in all things, notice that carefully, it didn't say in some things, it said in all things, he might have the preeminence. In all things, he might have the preeminence. Now, the reason why Jesus Christ is the one who is supposed to have the preeminence is because of this formula. Redemption is equal to creation. The power of God in redemption is the same as the power of God in creation. And hence, he is the head of the church, the body, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead. And it says, for it pleased the Father, verse 19, that in him should all fullness dwell. In him all fullness will dwell. For example, let us look at the text of scripture, which I think all Christians are familiar with. Notice this carefully. Let us look at this text of scripture in John chapter 3 and verse 16. And I think even anyone who perhaps is not even quite familiar with the Bible, even non-Christians might be able to quote this for you. It says here, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. God, the Father in heaven, so loved. So now you think of it. God loved. Now, another way of putting it is that the world was beloved by God. So in other words, God, another attribute of God is that he is the beloved. All right? So the beloved Father, he loved us so much that he is going to give us something that is he himself. Now when he gave us his Son, he gave us himself, because we know that Jesus Christ, we are told, is the image of the invisible God. So the invisible God gave himself in his visible Son. So when God gave himself, the God who beloved us, when he gives us himself, what is he going to give us? He's going to give us the beloved, right? He's going to give us a beloved. Now, he gave us himself. So this is why we know that Jesus Christ and God are one and the same. Although they are distinct personalities, he is simply the visible expression of the invisible God, yet still they are one. So the invisible beloved gave the visible beloved. So God, the beloved, gave his beloved Son. So now this is why, and he made that confirmation on the day when Jesus Christ was baptized. And I'm sure we all remember the story of when Christ was baptized. Hear what it says. It says, I think it's in the book of Luke there, also in the book of John, when he came out of the water, what did they hear? A voice. Behold, this is my beloved Son. And he confirmed that. Another point in time was when he look at Luke there in Matthew chapter 17, Matthew chapter 17, we can look at that quickly. On the Mount of Transfiguration. Now, this was something that the beloved Father, who gave his beloved Son himself, he was simply confirming the fact that this Son was really himself. He was simply confirming that. So he says there on the Mount of Transfiguration, you remember when Peter, James, and John were taken up on the Mount of Transfiguration there with Christ, it says, while he yet spake, verse 5, that was Peter, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And behold, a voice out of the cloud, which said, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear ye him. And when the disciples heard it, they fell on their faces and were so afraid. Now, why did that happen? Why did God try to make that confirmation upon to Peter, James, and John on the Mount of Transfiguration? You know why? I'll tell you why. Peter was the one, Peter, James, and John, this is what they said. In verse 3 it says, behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elias, or Elijah, talking with him. And then Peter, then answered Peter and said unto Jesus, Lord, it is good to be here, for us to be here. For thou wilt let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for thee, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. So now, here it is, Peter is now trying to give even the prophet Moses and the prophet Elijah the preeminence, right? He's trying to give them the preeminence. And God here now is going to crush this thing down to show that the one who is supposed to have the preeminence must be his Son. Now look what it says in verse 5. While he yet spake. In other words, he was not even finished saying what he had to say. Like a child who is rude to his parents in saying something that is utterly obscene. It was like if Christ gave Peter a backhand, as it were. Peter was not able to even finish what he was saying. And while he yet spake, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and behold, a voice out of the cloud which said, this is my beloved Son. And verse 6 said, and when the disciples heard it, they fell on their faces and were so afraid. They licked the dust. In other words, they knew what it meant to be humble. They licked the humus. See? They licked the humus. They licked the dirt. They understood what humility meant. You don't ever try to give any human being the preeminence, whether he's a prophet or not. Christ is the only one. And look what it says in verse 7. And Jesus came and touched them and said, arise and be not afraid. And when they had lifted up their eyes, who did they see? They saw no man but Jesus only. And they learned the lesson. Give Christ the preeminence. He's the only one that deserves it. For by him were all things created, and by him all things consist. How dare you build a tabernacle for a human being like yourself, like Moses and Elijah? They fell to the ground, and this is what Ellen White says. She says, righteousness by faith is laying in the dust the glory of man. This is what she says. Righteousness by faith is laying in the dust the glory of man. And that is what happened to Peter, James, and John. Their glory was laid in the dust. When they got up, the 2 men that they wanted to crown as kings and to place on the tabernacle of David, they disappeared. They were nowhere to be seen, and they saw Christ only. They saw who is really the beloved. And we all know that the beloved is David. David means the beloved. So this problem that we have even in the world today, where men are seeking to have either the preeminence for themselves or to give some other man the preeminence. Now, they wouldn't give the real Moses. Peter wanted to give the real Moses the preeminence. But in our day, we find men saying they want to give antitypical Elijah the preeminence, or the antitypical Moses the preeminence. Now, if the real Moses and the real Elijah couldn't even have the preeminence, to sit on the tabernacle of David, how can the antitypical Moses or how can the antitypical Elijah sit on the tabernacle of David or in the tabernacle of David? Now I tell you, the same experience, therefore, that Peter, James, and John had on the Mount of Transfiguration, where they came face to face and they saw the glory of God and they got a knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. When men in our days have that experience, it is only then they will see the need of giving Christ the preeminence. It is only when they are brought to the point where they lick the dust, as it were, they will see the need that it is Jesus only, as it says in Matthew chapter 17 and verse 5 here, that is supposed to have the preeminence. Now, this is serious. This is very, very serious. So I say to all those who are listening, to those who desire to have any man placed above yourself, or to have even yourself placed above any human being, I say it is a dangerous thing. It is a dangerous thing.
Follow our studies at Solemn Thought Ministries on YouTube to learn more.